please visit our websites, agenda21today.com, repatriateradio.com, panhandlepatriots.com, and americaismyname.org. And today I'm very happy to have with us, as usual, my co-host, John Estabrooks, who is on the land. Unfortunately, not good news, because we'd much rather have him out there on the rig pumping, but the hurricane has made that little bit impossible. And we'll have with us also Karen Bracken. John, welcome.
Hey, good to be with you, Karen.
And John and I were having a conversation just before we got on the air. So, John, I think it's important that the people know that we are down on our production and what that's going to take. So if you wouldn't mind, I know, repeating yourself, that would be great.
Okay. Well, Karen, the one thing anytime a hurricane enters the Gulf Coast, which is where the bulk of our refining capacity is in America, those refineries that are close to the coastline are required to shut down. So for Isaac, we lost 1.2 million barrels of oil a day with all of the refineries that were shut down. At this time, we have one refinery back up and operating at its capacity, but we're still behind each day now, 800,000 barrels, as these older refineries require a little bit more time to bring them on, and that's because America hasn't built a new refinery since 1976. We go in and sometimes on a 5-year basis, refabricate the old equipment and bring it up to the standards of the EPA, which is the very reason that we haven't opened up a new refinery. So our refinery
I believe, if we remember back then, we put in place, Jimmy Carter, thank you, put in place the Department of Energy, whose sole purpose was to bring America energy independent. And look where we are today with all of these wonderful policies that have done nothing like that. And I believe this week is the DNC convention, and they're going to be honoring President Carter, who brought our energy policy to its knees. Folks, listen to what John just said. We have not built a new refinery. That is disastrous. And we have all of this energy that we can't use. And
Karen, that's a statistic, and that's something the American people need to understand also, that is not shared broadly. We actually are exporting some petroleum products to South America, and there are vessels leaving Houston on a daily basis. When these refineries that we have are at maximum capacity for the products they make, but America is not using them. and the reason that the products aren't being used is because guess who makes, most of the plastic goods that we import from China? Guess who? We furnish them with the refined products to make those things. Why are we manufacturing in the United States of America, where we keep our resources here? It's ridiculous, and it's an endless circle, and the energy story of America is a bright one, especially for jobs creation, and I think that the Republicans get that. I think that the large part of that is from patriots like yourself that have shared the message openly that this nation can provide its own energy independence based on coal, natural gas, and crude oil. And it can be done in a clean burning process. We have the technology, and technology continues to advance. If the regulators...
Well, we are now going to need everybody, John, involved, because last Friday, this president signed another executive order, fooling again, using flowery language to push green energy and his desire to create all of these cogeneration plants. And I want everybody to understand this. because, John, you're here and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a cogeneration plant that reuses its own energy for heat needs coal or fossil fuel to work. So how are you going to create green energy if you can't create and use the coal and the fossil fuel that are needed in order to create it? So this whole thing is a lie, it's a scam, it's a hoax, and really all it is cap and trade, because Congress said, no, we're on to you, so we'll do this by executive fiat, and we'll create another layer of regulation which is going to make our energy prices necessarily skyrocket, because that's really the goal. Now,
and you know, Karen, the most powerful thing that folks need to understand about what President Barack Obama, each time he puts in place one of these executive orders, different from any other president, he does it to circumvent Congress. You know, other presidents have used executive powers during times of war, so he hasn't written the most executive orders, but the ones that he does circumvents Congress. And when you circumvent Congress as the president, what you are doing is doing away with the will of the people. You're not giving our representatives the final say-so on any of this legislation. When our Congress turns it down, Barack Obama then exercises executive privilege and puts in place an executive order that circumvents the Congress. It's the first time that we've had this on this scale, because it's about biweekly. Every 2 weeks, we see our president passing executive orders to circumvent the will of the people.
And we should be looking at, or maybe we should be calling Friday Executive Order Day and get people to understand what this is, because just because it is an executive order does not mean it has to be implemented. Congress has the ability to stop them. What's happening is, too often, our congressional leaders are not stopping them because somehow, might I say, their palms have been greased a little bit. On a blanket statement, I would say so, yes. Somebody will be donating, somebody will be doing something that will assist them in turning the other cheek and looking the other way. And that's where this is all going to come up, folks. It's up to us. If we want to fix this country, if we want to do things that are going to improve America, if we want to get back our freedom, we've got to get it back. And the only way that that's going to happen is if we, the people, take control and take charge. I wrote a piece the other day, and I thought there was a really good statement in there. If you send representatives to represent you, and you don't tell them what to say, then you can't be surprised if they're not representing you. And that's what we have going on in our Congress right now, because the people that are there have, to my knowledge, they've been selected by the establishment. And I'm going to ask our next guest, Karen Bracken, who is the Genders National Coordinator, to chime in, because we've been having conversations about this all week, and Karen has made some amazing discoveries on how this process really works. So thank you, Karen, for joining us today.
And thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Karen also has a website that is called America Don't Forget, and that is also, in addition to Agenda 21, Karen pinpoints key articles, key legislation, key things that are going on. So please go to Karen's website, in addition to agenda21today.com, and join on with Karen. If you are a leader in your state, please get a hold of her. It's so important. We are sending out tremendous amount of information, and that's really what is so important. So Karen made an amazing discovery. Why don't you share with us what it is, because it still blows my mind when I think about it.
Well, I had gotten an email from one of our agenders, as I normally do, and it was a link to the Aspen Institute, and it was a roster of Rodel Fellows. And when I looked at the roster, I saw that Paul Ryan was listed, and I also saw that Debbie Wasserman Schultz was listed in the same class. And I'm like, wow, that's really like weird. Like, why would Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Paul Ryan be interested in the same of anything? So I started doing some research. I'm thinking this was sent to me for a reason. So I started doing some research. Personally, I had never heard of the Aspen Institute before. So I started doing, and what I normally do when I start my research, I use a website called Muckety.com. And you can put in a name of a person, George Soros, whatever, and it pulls up a diagram of all associations with this particular institute, foundation, or person. So I just put in Aspen Institute, and one of the associations happened to be the Open Society, which we all know is George Soros. So the more I started digging and researching, I am finding that the Aspen Institute is very embedded with the United Nations. As a matter of fact, in 1991, they had a major planning session held at the Aspen Institute in preparation for the 1992 Rio Earth Summit. That was just one of the little gems that I uncovered. And then I started going through all of the different fellows that have gone through the Aspen Institute. I found Pam Bondi, of the Attorney General for Florida, Trey Haggart, who is my state's Secretary of State. I found that Maurice Strong was at one time a director of the Aspen Institute, and he is also a trustee emeriti of the Aspen Institute. The Aspen Institute is funded by Carnegie, Rockefeller, Bill and Melinda Gates, George Soros Open Society. So, you know, again, it was just mind-boggling. The Aspen Institute is also very much behind a push that we have right now in our state governments for benefit corporations. So that's a whole other subject. But the Aspen Institute.
Before we go on to benefits corporation, it's very important that we all understand these people that are in office. They are all being educated by the same group. So if you think that Barack Obama is in office and has his own mindset, think again. If you think that Romney is going to get in office and has his own mindset, think again. Because all of them are being educated by the same people. And I had a conversation with someone just before getting on the phone, and I said, when I mentioned this to him, he said, yes, Karen, and that is why it is so important that as we go forward, the right people, the people who are knowledgeable, the grassroots people, start running for office and start taking over our states. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be focusing on education and then what you can do with that education. So Karen uncovered this snake and peeled back the onion and then came up with the latest trick that they are going to be placing on the people. So why don't you go on now and tell us what the benefit corporation is.
And just to jump back a little bit on the Aspen Institute, you know, this was started back in like 1950, and it originally started out as a institute to promote the arts, and it has just gradually been taken over like every other thing that kind of starts out good. You know, the big money starts moving in and taking over. And, you know, it is my intention to contact Paul Ryan's office, and I want an explanation as to why he has an affiliation with the Aspen Institute. They are truly a UN arm, They are truly implementing UN Agenda 21 and sustainable development. And they are also strongly behind benefit corporations, which is another agenda. It is public-private partnerships on steroids. And what they do is they go into the state, and the funny part of it is the people that certify benefit corporations. Benefit corporations can be certified. They don't have to be certified. But if they are to be certified, one of the organizations that does the certification is a group called B, like in boy, Lab. And the three founders of B Lab are both graduates of Stanford University, and they are also Aspen Fellows. So isn't that a coincidence? So basically, a benefit corporation is a corporation that promises to not, be real concerned with the bottom line and the shareholders, but to be more concerned with directing your profits towards the poor and the environment. My question is, why do we need a law for a business to do this? And the people that are pushing this legislation, B-Lab, is one of the very people that goes in, pushes this legislation to get passed. To me, my radar goes up immediately. Why is a corporation that certifies B Corps pushing for benefit corporation legislation? Sounds like maybe there's some money for them to be made in the process. So. And again, like I said, yes. And, it is, again, allowing the government to be in bed with business. It is, again, allowing the government to select winners and losers. New Jersey has passed this legislation. Hawaii, California, many other states have passed it. There is pending legislation in Pennsylvania, Colorado. Luckily, Florida is neither do they have legislation nor is there any pending legislation. But I think people need to be very well aware of benefit corporations. Do your research. Very easy to find all kinds of interesting information. And this is how it all just kind of fed off of each other. I started, doing information or research on Aspen, and then when you start digging into their association, their associates, and it just leads into so many other things. And this B Corporations was another thing, and B Lab.
John, you're going to have to check in Louisiana and see if they are in Louisiana as well.
Yeah, well, we just created a backdoor position inside of our with our last legislation session that's going to make it available, Karen, and I think it's something that they will try to advance in the next session. But we're aware of it because they created a position in government that will monitor this operation. So we know they've got a plan to carry it forward. But I was having a conversation with my wife the other evening, and we had just attended Obama 2016, and I shared with her a knowledge that every American must have. If you can go online and you can research the top 100 corporations in the United States of America. And you can also find the links of this top 100 corporations all over the globe. These people don't just do business here. Their primary businesses may be located somewhere, but they've got contracts with the government, and they're the top 100 corporations that contract with the federal government. Now, the only thing that shifts when we change from a Republican executive to a Democrat president is that they're where they rank. ExxonMobil moves up the ladder underneath the Republican. But this has been going on now for 50 years. 50 years, that top 100 corporations that are contracting with this nation has not changed. All they do is gain more and more power over our legislatures.
Yeah.
And it's happening. It's real.
Yes.
The Aspen Institute, if you look at there's a website that lists, and it is a United Nations website that lists the NGOs that are registered and certified by the UN, and Aspen Institute is listed. It is on there.
The thing that we have to realize, because I'm sure that people right now are rolling their eyes and saying one more thing, and what does it mean to me? Agenda 21, when I think back in American history, not so far back to the 1990s, think about what happened. When did our debt start escalating off the charts? When Agenda 21 started getting implemented in America. Because what happens, folks, is we the people are paying for all of this. Why do we have a debt that is absolutely so astronomical, and our services are less and less and less? Go take a look at some of the states that Karen mentioned. You'll find that those states are the ones with the highest debt. Why do they have such high debt? They have such high debt because they're siphoning off our tax dollars, and instead of using them for Americans, they are using them to create grants, to create programs, to create education, to create any possible thing that they can create to siphon off the money of the American people and get the money out of the hands of the American people and into the hands of these corruptocrats. I love that word. That was the Michelle Malkin word. To get our money into the hands of these corruptocrats who are nothing more than corporate heads of businesses.
Yes.
This whole idea.
Yeah, Karen, the one fact that is real is that these corporations are ruling the governments all over the planet, not just the United States of America. And when you're speaking about the redistribution of dollars and how they're siphoning off our tax dollars with the creation of new policies and new bureaus, but then also they're doing in conjunction with the Federal Reserve banking system and the central banking system across the globe. Our wealth in the United States, we have lost 40% of the value of our currency, and the Federal Reserve continues to print money. So it's a multi-layered, and it is. There's so many layers of this deception that it's mind-boggling, but we know it's easy to track. It is being revealed to every American citizen. It's just when will they wake up and start this education process?
Well, one of the good things that Ron Paul has done is he has opened up everybody's eyes and given the Federal Reserve much more of a notoriety than was ever given before. Because if you listen to what Alan Greenspan used to say, what he used to say was, well, we're the Federal Reserve and we're above the law. We actually control the law. Folks, this is about controlling currency and credit. The people that control the money are the ones that control the votes. And if you think about what's the American debt right now, which I don't believe exists because they stole our money. So what they have done is they've taken $16 trillion out of America's hands, exactly with what John is saying. Do your research. They go in the beginning when they started this on the unsuspecting third world African countries. Why? Because they didn't have an education like Americans had. They didn't understand some of the things that Americans did. So they went to the African countries under the idea of boosting their economy, making them industrialized, helping them to improve poverty and hunger. Now think about that. 30, 40 years ago, poverty and hunger. What do we still have today? Poverty and hunger. Has the message changed? No. Well, where did the money go? They took our money, and then loaned it to the dictators of the African countries at 30% interest, a little usury in there. But that's America's money. Now, where did that money, that 30% interest, go? Did it go back into the American Treasury? No. It went back into the hands of the Federal Reserve because that was their goal to begin with. So they siphoned off our money, loaned it to the dictators in the African countries, and then turned around to these dictators and forced them or told them that they had to sign papers that said if the country defaults, then the natural resources of that country will be used as collateral and will get put into the hands of the Federal Reserve, i.e. these major corporations. So think about that. They took our money, they gave it to the people in Africa, they gave it to the dictators. Did the dictators give it to their people? No, because if they did, we wouldn't be fighting poverty and hunger. They put it in their pocket. And guess what happened? The African countries defaulted. And guess what happened? The natural resources of those countries became part of exactly what John said. They moved into the hands of the corporations, of the same people that control the money, and they are literally stealing and looting the natural resources of the countries of Africa under the guise of eliminating poverty and hunger.
And now, we better guard ourselves that it's not going to happen right here, Karen, because that's
right.
The one thing that I know
exactly what they're doing here. Exactly what they're doing here.
When we can't burn coal, and our EPA and the Department of Interior work ardently to shut down coal-burning facilities so that coal can't be burnt here, and yet we sign contracts to coal miners, our resources, American resources, dug out from underneath our feet, are shipped to China. And the same thing's happening in oil. The products that we can't use here because we can't open manufacturing facilities because of the improper trade agreements are being shipped to foreign countries. Our resources. They are raping and robbing our resources, and trust me, whether it's Mitt Romney or Barack Obama, the rape of the American resources will continue.
Well, understand too that the whole this is all a part of the UN Agenda 21 is to ruin the industrialized nations. That's why you're seeing, the destruction of our economy, the moving of our industry to other countries. That is part of the plan to destroy this country.
Absolutely.
Think about the housing market, folks. What was the one thing that the American middle class could always count on? They could count on their house. They could count on the value of their house. They could count on their house if they needed to borrow money to start a business, if they needed to use money for their kids to go to college, if they needed to use money for their retirement. That was always the mainstay of the American middle class. Agenda 21 calls for the destruction of the American middle class. What better way to do that than to crash the housing market? Then what happens to all of those houses? Well, now we've got a new program so the banks will be able to use rental properties. Who are they going to rent those properties to? Right back to the same people that own them?
Right.
Do you understand the game? Do you understand what the money manipulation is all about? And then we go back to education. Why don't people understand this? Why don't they get it? Because economics is not being taught in school anymore.
Nor
so
is
if you
history.
don't understand economics, I was going to ask you about Aspen and what their take is on American history. But if you don't understand economics, then you can't have a group of people in office that think that debt is a wonderful thing and the one with the biggest debt is the winner. And Joe Biden, don't worry about the debt. No, it's not insignificant. It doesn't matter. What do you mean it doesn't matter? Debt. Listen to Thomas Jefferson. People in debt are slaves to the debtor. What did they say about American history in the Aspen Institute, Karen?
That it should not be. There was no need to teach history. They do not believe in sovereignty, and that they do not believe that history should be taught in the educational system.
And why would you think they don't believe in sovereignty? And look what has happened as a result of that.
Right, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole game plan. That's what it's all about. And these money brokers, these bankers, they think they're going to have a seat at the table. That it's going to be them, and it's going to be us, the poor, and subservient. And that is the new America, the new world that they're looking for. Aspen Institute. And this, benefit corporation, and if you read the benefit corporation, you actually have to sign a declaration of interdependence.
Oh my God.
As a benefit corporation, it is a declaration of interdependence. And, it talks about the new economy. If you read the legislation, I've been looking at the legislation, I've been looking at the testimonies that these different companies, like the Aspen Skiing Company, and I'm like, why would the Aspen Skiing Company be testifying to the Colorado Congress on behalf of a piece of legislation pushing benefit corporations? And I started digging at this Aspen Skiing Company. And they, too, have roots with George Soros and the UN and all of this stuff. I couldn't believe it. So, just like D-Lab is going in and testifying in the state of Pennsylvania and other states, they have a vested interest. You now have the Aspen Skiing Company, which is 4 large ski resorts in Aspen, Colorado. And they actually are testifying on behalf of benefit corporations. So then you start looking at
They didn't read Agenda 21 where they say that skiing is not sustainable.
Yes. Well, but think about it, really. Think about GE and the light bulb and the things that they're doing. They're in bed with the very people that are out to destroy their company and their business. They know this. They know this. There's something else going on behind the scenes that's motivating them to do what they're doing. And this Aspen Skiing Company definitely, is on board. Apparently what they're saying is the biggest housing boom in this area is the Aspen Skiing Company building homes there for their employees. See, and this is what the benefit corporation, it's like communism. Oh, you work for us and we build you a house and, and you can live here and walk to work every day. It's like China, where people go to work and the government supplies a house for them. When I started reading what was going on there, I'm like, oh my God, this is like the ideal communist city. It's,
Yeah.
Well, that is a model of these sustainable developments, folks, and they are the model. If you go back in history and you look at the ghettos that Hitler created, same deal. You work in the ghetto. If your ghetto is a energy-producing ghetto, and that's your job of that ghetto, then your school is going to teach the people how to work in the plant that is going to be promoted by that community. And everybody that lives there is going to be learning just about energy. They won't be learning about anything else. And that's the whole concept of how this is all tied together. It is all tied together. It starts with the control of the money, control of the education, control of the economy, and how are they doing it? By eliminating God and morality and instituting all of the perverted toys and games to shift the people's attention away from what is really going on.
If you go out into the internet and you Google a comparison between, and there is a book called The Ideal Communist City. One of the things in this book that they talk about is the square footage allowed for an apartment for a family of 4. And that square footage was 600 square feet for a family of 4. It was just so funny that, a few months ago, Mayor Bloomberg of New York City was talking about a trial program to build these little apartments for 1 to 2 people that were 300 square feet. Now, mathematics tells me, and basic mathematics, because I was not educated in the federal government system, I'm an old-timer, and I was still in a good educational system, tells me that, the ideal communist city, 600 square feet for 4 people, Mayor Bloomberg of New York City, 300 square feet for 1 to 2 people. Kind of equates, doesn't it? And if you Google, there is a comparison right out on the Internet. You can Google the ideal communist city and compare it to sustainable development. And it takes things right from the ideal communist city and compares it to the tenets and policies of sustainable development. And it is very eye-opening.
It is stunning when you make the comparison. And folks, the most important thing that we have to do is get educated. Educated in the truth, not educated by the media. There is so much wonderful information on the Internet. Use it while we can. Because eventually, think about this. In school, what are they trying to eliminate? They're trying to eliminate books. They are trying to put in place all of these wonderful Internet programs. Why do they want to eliminate a book? Well, if I have distributed a couple of million books, and I say the ideal communist city equates to the ideal communist city equates to sustainable development. In order for that book to be corrected, and heaven forbid, there are copies there that don't get recalled, somebody eventually will find that information. If everything is online, and I want to take out and change history, I just have to write a new program, and all of a sudden history is gone.
Why do you think there's a big push to control the Internet? Because so many of us are finding the truth on the Internet. So they have to control it to control the truth that we do have access to.
And when you find these documents, pull them off and put them in a file folder and keep them at your disposal so that when it comes time, and I believe it will, there will be a test, an EMP, or something that's going to take the grid down, that we won't have electricity, that the Internet will be shut off. It's a maneuver. It's not the truth. It's not what is going to happen. So gather these books now. Gather as much information as you can so that when things come back and they're changed, you have the truth at your fingertips.
Yep.
Get a printer. Make sure you do that. And start investigating. Don't take what Karen is saying, and what John is saying as being the truth. That's not the way the truth works. The truth is you hear information, and then you go and do your own investigation. And then when you have investigated, you take that education and share it with other people. And that's how this gets started, that you will be learning what the truth is and what is being done to we the people as we are being stripped away from our rights and our property and our country by a group of thugs who feel that they are richer and smarter and should control everything. They want to control everything. Ayn Rand was right. Atlas Shrugged, which I believe is coming out Part 2 in October. If you have not seen it, go now and see Part 1 and see Part 2 in October. I took a copy of the book. It's huge. And I figure when the lights go off, I'll have something to read again. But, folks, this is what they're doing. Nobody does this all at once. nobody is going to say we're going to come in and make America communist. We would scream, we would yell, we would stamp our feet. What they do is they will say, well, we have to create this little green program over there, and that's going to kill that industry. Oh, too bad. Well, we'll give you another industry. Sure, they're going to give you another industry at half the price.
Well,
owned by the
if you look at this, this new executive order that came out, in it, they just make raves about the amount of money it's going to save and about the amount of jobs it's going to create, and with no data to support it. And I say, go look at Spain. Were there any jobs created in Spain? You know, look at the other countries that are doing this, and they are not saving money, and people's electric bills are so expensive they can't even afford to have heat in their homes in the winter, and jobs are not being created. It is a given fact that this green initiative is a job killer, not a job creator. And they make these statements, and people just, you know, wave their heads up and down. Oh, you know, it all sounds wonderful. Nobody ever asks any questions. Well, where's your proof? Where's your data? I wouldn't trust their proof or data anyhow, because what are they going to do? Come out and say, oh, it's going to kill jobs? Oh, it's going to cost you a fortune? Oh, you know, they're not going to say that.
That's right.
But we all know that this bill is a killer to our energy industry, and it is a job killer.
Yep. Well, and that's been the mission for quite some time, and I don't think that that's ever going to change, and they're certainly never going to allow, you know, and that's one of my fears when I see the move for the nationalized education system and the Common Core curriculum that's being accepted. And when you go in and you attempt to find out, well, okay, what part of fact-based history are you going to educate in your Common Core curriculum? And fact-based history is being removed. So, you know, one of the important things, and Karen said it just a few minutes ago, retain books. I mean, whatever you can get your hands on, get fact-based history books into the hands of children. Because, you know, if these guys, and I think they're becoming keenly aware that they have mistimed this total takeover. Because I think that that's why Barack Obama was elected and put into power, is because he was a Marxist that would implement the full takeover in handing over the United States to the UN as a nation state. And they became keenly aware through the Tea Party uprisings and the Patriot organizations, this radio program, and the, you know, all of the things now that we are doing and what we're able to dig off of the internet and find the truth and share the truth. I think that they know they've mistimed their event. So what what if they slow it down and they boost the American economy and they elect Mitt Romney and he creates 12 million new jobs? Will the American people go back to sleep long enough to allow the indoctrination of the next generation?
Right.
And that's my biggest fear, is that people will ease up and they'll say, well, no, he's doing great things. The economy's turned around. Oh, look what he's doing. No, don't be deceived. They operate through lies and deception.
Well, the American people have to understand that this infiltration of communism in our country has been happening for 100 years. This is not something that just happened with Barack Obama. It's been going on, slowly infiltrating like the frog in the boiling pot of water for 100 years, and they are very, very close to realizing their dream. So we're going to go one of two ways. We're going to either have Barack Obama in office, which will put the last nail in our country's coffin, or they're going to, like you said, attempt to lull the American people back to sleep with Romney so that they can, again, just slowly and more arbitrarily drive that last nail into the coffin. Either way, no matter whether it's Obama or it's Romney that gets elected, if we go back to sleep, our country will be lost and our freedoms will be lost. Romney is not going to save this country.
No.
No, he's going to save some jobs and give us a feel-good moment,
exactly.
so that we can pat ourselves on the back and say, look at what we did, and now we have jobs again. But here's the other fear, too. In your school boards, don't let them put everything on computers. Don't let them close the school library. Think about this, folks. Every time your child uses that keyboard and makes that keystroke, it's being recorded. Every piece of information, every question your child is asked, it's being recorded. Why? So that they can determine what your child's aptitude is to what job they should have. A book doesn't do that.
You mentioned that Agenda 21 is control, but it is also, it's not only just control, it's inventory. It's inventory and control. That's what it is.
And it's the inventory of people. What is America's asset? America's asset is its people. Having resources are wonderful, which we have, but if the people don't know how to use them, it doesn't make any difference. You could have a million things, and if you don't know how to use them because you don't have the intelligence to be able to use them, it doesn't matter what toy or game you have. So it's the people, and it's the people power, and it's the intelligence of the people. And that is not ever, should never be replaced by a computer, because all your children are going to do are going to become slaves unto the computer. A computer doesn't know if your child knows how to think. A computer doesn't know if your child has logic and reason. And a computer doesn't know if your child is intuitive and can ask questions. And that's not the purpose of education anymore. So don't use money. We can't afford this to our school board. You're going to raise our taxes to put in the Internet. Don't allow it to happen. The old-fashioned way of not being recorded, of your child having the ability to think, is what's going to save this country. Because buying into this... Go ahead, Bob.
You talk about the old-fashioned way. They'll come back and, this is the modern way. Well, you know what? There is something to be said for some of the old-fashioned ways, and I think maybe we need to start thinking about some of the things that worked in the old days, that worked a lot better than they are working today. And one of those things was education. Once education moved from the state level to the federal level, our education, we're spending more money, and our children are dumber today. There was a statistic that I read that 8th grade math, what was considered 8th grade math back in the 50s and the 60s, is now considered college-level mathematics. So Why would any child be going into a college to have remediation? Right.
That does not make sense at all. A child going into college for remediation because they didn't learn how to read in grade school. Of course they didn't learn how to read. They're busy having sex classes and drug classes and bullying classes and any class that will divert their attention away from what they need to do, which is learning how to read.
All right. One of the things that I doubt highly that Romney will ever address, and that is the defunding and the disbanding of the Department of Education, the EPA, HUD, all of that stuff. They're unconstitutional organizations, and they need to be done away with. And
there are wonderful homeschooling programs. If you can gather a group of kids, if you have retired teachers, I'm going to ask all the retired teachers, be a mentor to the children in your neighborhood. Start a class somewhere, somebody's basement, some church, some group, some organization. Have a class and teach the children how to read, because they're not going to get it in school. And don't be fooled by charter schools. Charter schools are just another place for your child to be indoctrinated, because nobody's going to have oversight. And why should we be paying public funds so that somebody else can profit off of our children? That's not education.
That's the exact evil of it. That's exactly why it's being done, Karen, is so that private corporations the friends of the community. Yeah, and look at every charter school. I would put anyone to the test. Go to your charter school if you have one, and find out who are the people sitting on this board, and then find their political connections in your community. It is a scam, and it's to take public dollars that these guys are going to be guaranteed. They're going to be guaranteed profit, regardless of the outcome, because they're reducing the standards to make it easy for charter schools. This is all a lie being perpetrated just to rob more tax dollars into private hands that they control. It's not you. You won't have a school board. You know, right now you've got elected officials that sit on a school board. Watch and let this nationalized curriculum take place, and guess what? It'll be handed over to somebody inside of your state, somebody inside of your county, whether you have a BESE board, a board of secondary elementary education. They will give one guy the job, and your school boards won't have any say. So when you do away with the school board say, you take away the parent say. They want parents out of the life of the child. It's an indoctrination process that's been used by every communist society, and it's being implemented in the United States of America every single day.
Right, and there are also two treaties sitting in the sidelines that I'm sure during the lame duck session are going to be pushed, along with the lost treaty. But there's two treaties, one addressing disabilities, children with disabilities, and the other is the rights of the child. Both of these bills, they're treaties, UN treaties, are designed to take away parental rights to your children. And in the rights of the child, one of the things that is not allowed in this treaty is homeschooling. They don't want children to be homeschooled. They want children to be schooled in the public school system so that they can be indoctrinated the way the government wants them to be. If they're home and they're learning from their parents and they're learning the truth, this is not what they want. So in this rights of the child, amongst many other things, it also is a huge expansion on welfare. Calls for a huge expansion on welfare. And if a country wants to change anything about their welfare laws, once they sign on to this treaty, they have to get permission from the United Nations, and they never give that permission. The UK is going through this right now. They wanted to reduce the amount of money paid out in welfare payments, and the UN, absolutely no way. So these are treaties that you have to be listening for, watching for, and making sure that our Senate, and remember that all treaties are passed in the Senate. They do not go to the House. So that's all they need, and we have a Democrat majority in the Senate right now, and they do require a 2/3, but we do have a Democrat majority, and we have several Republicans that really should be called Democrats, Scott Brown and Olympia Snow and all of them that end up...
And they're leaving. Many of them are leaving, so they have no allegiance to anything except their almighty pocketbook of where they'll be going in the future. I want to thank you both, Karen and John, for this wonderful show today. Folks, we have put together a series of seminars and webinars and conferences and conference calls. This is the truth. Once you learn the truth, the bad news is it may be horrible. The good news is once you learn the truth, you can't unlearn it. So go on to agenda21today.com, sign up for a webinar, come to a seminar, come to a conference. They're being conducted all over the country. If you want to know where there's one in your state, just send us an email, send Karen an email, send an email to info@agenda21today.com. But sign up and get educated. We can't win this game. We can't take back our country if we don't know what's going on. And by refusing to learn and refusing to learn the truth, we're just going to be handing our children over to a bunch of corrupt individuals who do not have their best interest ever at heart and want America to be just the same like any other third world country, we will lose our exceptionalism and we will lose everything. So thank you, John. Thank you, Karen. We'll be back again next week. Please go to agenda21today.com, sign up, pay attention, give that information. Once you get it, don't sit on it, because that won't do any good either. Share it. And you don't have to share it all at once, because it's a lot to absorb. We understand that. We know that. You can't learn everything that we're talking about in 5 minutes, but you can learn something. And share that something. Otherwise, when we go to the ballot box next time, we may not have a choice. There may be no choices. There may be no way for good people to run. There may be no school boards. There may be nothing. And we cannot allow that to happen. We didn't fight. Our founding fathers didn't fight so that we could have a country that we could turn around and give away exactly what they fought for. Think about our veterans. What did they fight for? They fought for us. If we don't honor them, who are we honoring?
Give up one football game a month and start attending your city council and county commission meetings and get engaged.
Yes,
absolutely.
And if school board is your passion, go to your school board meetings. Folks, start going. The only way they're going to be accountable to you is if you show up. If you don't show up, they're not accountable. They don't have to be. They feel you're not listening. They feel it's not important. They feel you don't care. And they feel that you've given them carte blanche to do whatever it is that they want. So we are all here to help. We are here to give you any resource and information. And when you hear something like these ridiculous plans coming through, remember, ask them, where's the scientific evidence that backs this up? What is the financial information? Where are the spreadsheets that show how many jobs this is going to produce? Why don't we have a test program to see where these programs actually work before you impose it upon billions of people or hundreds of millions in America? There are no test models. The programs don't work, and every single one of these projects is morally bankrupt. Because if they did not have your money, my money, our taxpayers' money, they would never show a profit. They would never be able to stand on their own. So thank you all. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you again next week. Don't forget, sign up for a conference, folks. This is our life, and this is our country, and we need to know the truth. Victory is our only option. Thank you all. Have a wonderful week.
Revolution, well, you know.